Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Mayor and Commissioner meeting for September the 12th, 2023. May I have the roll call?
Commissioner Braun,
Here.
Commissioner Kleiner,
Here.
Commissioner Pearson,
Here,
Commissioner Warnick, Mayor Marion.
both absent.
Let the record show you do have a quorum.
Okay, may we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, I realize that yesterday was 9/11. However, that is an extremely special day to me. So if we could take a moment for prayer for those people who lost their lives, we'll just have a moment of silence from 9/11. Thank you. We have an amendment to the agenda. Town Administrator?
Actually, the way the agenda is presented to you is fine.
It's fine?
Yes.
Okay. All right. On to the consent agenda. Town Administrator.
So in your packet for the consent agenda is you have the town meeting video summary report in front of you. You also have the projected meeting dates going forward of Tuesday, October 10th, 2023, November 14th, 2023, and then you have 3 ordinances and 1 resolution to be considered as part of the consent agenda. The 3 ordinances and the resolution they're presented as emergency ordinances only in the sense that as more and more things start to evolve in the town in terms of now that the sewer and water moratorium is over for a couple of years now, there are times when we find some deficiencies or conflicts in our various codes. And although long before some of us coming here, there were policy decisions made in the past that may or may not be consistent at times with what we actually have in our code book. I'll go into those individually, but one that jumps out is the personal property tax on commercial inventory. So if you'd like, I'll give you a quick summary of the 3 ordinances and the resolutions.
Well, before we go to there, I believe we need a motion to approve the town minutes or the meeting video
Well,
from prior.
you would do, what you do with the consent agenda is if you're fine with everything being made a part of the consent agenda, we'd go through each one and you're going to do one vote
Thank
to
you.
approve the consent agenda.
Then let proceed.
Okay, so the first one you have before you is ordinance 2023-11, which is titled APFO, BAF, and impact fees. And essentially what this is it is very common in local government, whether it be county government, town government in the state of Maryland or anywhere in the country, for communities to have legislation on a state level that authorizes communities to collect certain fees in relation to what we're going to call here for the purposes of this explanation, the impact that development can have on infrastructure. And infrastructure is used very loosely. It's infrastructure and services. So it could be services such as public safety, police and fire. It could be park and recreation. It could be roads, sidewalks, sewer, water. You get the gist. Whatever it is the entity provides to people, you have the right to charge an impact fee for that. And with that said, impact fee is used rather lightly in that in the state of Maryland, no community can charge impact fees unless it's expressly provided for in state legislature. Now, county legislation is set up a little bit different than town legislation in that, for whatever reason, a county has to be called out specifically in state law as being able to apply these impact fees to development, whereas municipalities, although the law is silent on municipalities, there was an attorney general's opinion that said that because essentially what it says, and it's in the ordinance here, that because the state legislature gives municipalities unilateral discretion, meaning every municipality is covered under one blanket statement as opposed to the legislature calling out individual counties. Every municipality is essentially permitted to charge reasonable fees for services, and in this case, impacts. So we, as other communities in Cecil County, to be more localized, have the ability to charge these fees. But impact fees can be a very broad definition. And what we have been doing here is we have been calling things a benefit assessment fee, and one thing we're working on is adequate public facilities ordinances. So again, just to give integrity to how we operate, we want to make sure that we're reflecting what we're actually doing within the law. So this ordinance basically, one, it sort of lays out there where we get the authority to charge these fees, and that we're sort of using, for the purposes of the law, impact fees, benefit assessment, and adequate public facility fees essentially all mean the same thing, a fee that we are charging. For your benefit, we consider benefit assessment fees to be fees to reimburse the town, and when I say the town, it's the taxpayers of the town, to reimburse the taxpayers for infrastructure upgrades that had to be done in the past, that because they are done, property owners or landowners can now develop their land. And so the idea is you don't want, and I've always said this, it's like having a membership at a country club where the members pay to put the addition on the country club and all the amenities, and then somebody else comes along 2 years later, they're not going to get into that club for the same amount of money because the investment benefited them and they didn't have to pay for it. So think of these fees in that manner. So our benefit assessment fees are meant to have development that now has the ability to develop to have to pay a fair share towards what was spent in the past. And then adequate public facilities, as just about every meeting now for the last 6 months we've been talking about it, adequate public facilities fees are basically to offset, and I like to call it the wear and tear or the consumption of capacity of infrastructure that we have. So what I mean by that is you can technically have adequate public facilities if you think you need more police, if you need to have a bigger park, if your roads are going to wear out because of more development, you have the development community start paying towards that. If you need a bigger water tower, if you need a bigger water line, if you need to do stuff at the sewer plant. So you get the gist. That's what adequate public facility fees are. We have been conceptually sort of doing that and circling around doing that, but it just makes sense from a good housekeeping standpoint to make sure that we have that clearly articulated in our code so that anyone coming to do business with us has a clear understanding. I think it's important to let residents know that an existing resident right now is not subject to benefit assessment fees. They are not subject to adequate public facility fees. Their taxes and their water and sewer rate have already financed that. This is basically to get new people and new businesses that come into the community to have to pay a fair share of what was already paid for or what is going to be impacted. So that's what this ordinance 2023-11 does. And then you have ordinance 2023-12, which is a good example of what I was talking about. The way we do business and what was found in a code don't exactly marry up, and we want to clean it up for that reason. Our businesses pay what is basically called a personal property tax, and in summary, it's a tax that they pay on equipment or whatever in their business. And under state law, it's sort of broken down into a couple categories, with two of them being commercial inventory and the other one being manufacturing inventory. And as our resident expert, Gary, who used to work for the Department of State Assessment, has told me that a lot of what is in the law right now is the result of going back several decades ago. These taxes were sort of collected on a local level, and then the Department of Assessments took it over. So they had a lot of legacy legislation that they had to deal with, and so that's how they came up with dealing with it. But right now, we do not charge businesses for inventory, but yet Chapter 9 of our code says that we charge a tax based upon inventory. And so what that would mean is potentially, and we want to make our community attractive for businesses to want to invest here, they already have their personal property tax on their equipment. That would mean that the inventory that they have in their facility at any given time would also become subject to a tax. And that's not commonly done, especially in Cecil County. So in order to continue to be competitive and to grow our community, we want to make sure that we're not putting our businesses at a disadvantage. So all this ordinance is doing is striking a line out of the existing ordinance that basically eliminates the words including commercial inventory. So that's all this is doing, is striking that language from there. And then the third and final ordinance that we have is an ordinance that in all of our building codes, and for rough numbers, we have about 15 different building codes on a state level that we enforce that come into play when people are doing work that requires a building permit. And then in addition to that, we have the National Fire Protection Codes that are all part of the National Fire Prevention Ordinance that the state of Maryland has adopted as the fire code for the state of Maryland, and a lot of states do that. Well, there could be upwards of 150 to 200 different codes and standards that are made up as part of the NFPA. All of those code books always provide a due process right of anyone who feels that the code has not been applied properly to their particular situation can request an appeal of that. And so all of these codes have generally the same language that says, if you think you've been aggrieved by a decision of the code officer, you can file an appeal. And this appeal will go before a board who will be charged with hearing that. And the code will talk about the number of some of the codes will tell you how many minimum numbers have to be on those boards. So when you take the explanation that I just gave you and just looked at the international building codes, you could hypothetically make an argument that you need 15 independent appeals boards, one to handle the plumbing code, one to handle the mechanical code, the electrical code, so forth and so on. So all this ordinance is looking to do is to create one code enforcement appeals board that will be the body that will hear the appeal of any and all appeals on any of our building and or fire codes. And then the last item, and that's just a housekeeping issue because we've already had that stuff in the books, but we wanted to put more organization to how those people get appointed to the boards, because all those codes I cited don't say how that is done. So this ordinance is basically gonna treat it just like our Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals, that it will be done by the mayor and commissioners through a resolution that you guys would approve for those members to serve. And then the last item is a resolution 2023-17, which we have 3 members of our community that have stepped up and wish to serve on this Code Enforcement Appeals Board. Now, bear in mind, I personally have been doing this for a long time, and in all the time I've been doing it, I've only been involved in 2, maybe 3 appeals. So this board might never have to deal with the case for the next 10 or 15 years. So it's not uncommon for when an appeals comes before a governing body, you say, well, who's on the appeals board? And some communities, they don't even have anybody on the appeals board. So we just want to streamline the process by, number one, putting some bodies on it. But bear in mind, if we get an appeal 10 or 15 years ago, or in the future, we might open up a book and say, John, Sally, and Betty are on the board, but then we're going to find out John, Sally, and Betty don't even live in the town anymore, so to speak. So this is just getting us that appeals board established. And the 3 members of the community that are interested in serving on the board are Mr. Charles Chip Slabaugh, Mr. David Klein, and Miss Judith Fisher. And the prerequisite, according to our ordinance, is to either be a town resident or an owner of property in the town to do that. So those are all the items on the consent agenda, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on any of those items.
Now, can we just vote straight up on the consent agenda?
Yes, somebody would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So I'm seconded.
Okay, the motion's been made by Commissioner Braun and seconded by Commissioner Kleiner. Is there any questions or anything?
The only clarification, again, is I would remind everybody that under normal circumstances, in some circumstances, you would present an ordinance and then let it sit.
No, we
But you
want to
have the
make these
ability to do an emergency
We are doing
ordinance. And we're
emergencies.
just treating it as an emergency ordinance because we want to get rid of these conflicts that are in our code right now.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There are no nays. The ordinance have all passed, and the consent agenda has passed, as along with the approval of the town meeting. Okay. Moving on to public presentations. I don't believe our Eagle Scout is here tonight.
No, that's correct.
So, we'll move on to unfinished business, which we have none. New business, which we have none. Citizens input. Mr. Houston. Well, I know, Skip, I was just, remember, you have to give your name
I
and
know,
your
I
address.
was thinking about that. I'm coming up with it. My name is Skip Hughes. I live at 36 West Cherry Street in Rising Sun. And I want to thank you all for the way you've worked with the mushroom farm to keep the odor down, because I think a couple of days ago, it wasn't too cool, but it's okay now. Now, my next question is, how's the water situation going? Because on my street, we're still not having very good water.
Well,
And that's just a comment, you don't have,
Okay.
you know.
do you have any,
I have not heard any complaints.
Oh,
his area.
Okay.
Not recently. However, I do want to say, and this can be backed up by the paper, back when we had the real problem back, I believe it was the end of July there, Perryville and Northeast both had the same problems. And Perryville, it was directed at the older infrastructure. Given your street, that's part of the older infrastructure in the town. That's, Chip, we test the water and it comes out fine.
yeah, but it,
But I know, every now and then, but there's no rhyme to the reason.
well, I've asked a lot of the people on the street, and half of them say they don't drink the water anymore, and the other half say it's still there, and we still taste it, and it's been like, since it started, and it started, at a certain time. It wasn't a gradual thing. It was just there.
It just went boom.
Yeah, and it's still, we might be getting used to it, but it's still there, and it's like I don't know. There has to be something that would just have it start.
Well,
And if it was just my house, I'd say it was mine,
Yeah.
but it's not.
but again, everything that Calvin and Judy with Public Works, everything really is pointing to the infrastructure, which we can't address right at the moment.
Yeah.
But that's the areas that were most affected seem to be where the oldest infrastructure is.
Commissioner
Reynolds.
Pearson, the one thing that I would suggest maybe we elaborate, because you had said there has to be a reason why it started. And I'd like Judy to go into I guess it's the growth that can come from when you're going into extreme temperatures and then heavy rain. It's sort of a natural process that occurs in a lot of water systems. And it can create a discoloration, and it can also create an odor.
And we that too, but there's like a metallic or some kind of maybe not metallic, but similar to metallic taste, which I thought might be my pipes.
We've
but it's
heard
not
people
my,
talk about it being a dirt taste,
a what?
a dirt, D-I-R-T, dirt taste.
Okay.
Taste dirty. Chip, we have actually pulled samplings from 4
Yeah.
homes.
Right.
And we've gone over and gone through those and had them tested, bring in the tester, test them immediately,
Right.
let them set and see if sediment happens. And so far, we haven't had anything of any mention, but I wish I could remember the name. It's a chemical that happens in open water systems, and it happens from runoff, from rain, especially after a dry spell. But you can get those in, give you an example. It comes in, I talk with my hands. It comes into your hot water heater. If you don't drain your hot water heater completely once a year, it could be sitting in there, and it could be what's driving that.
Oh.
It also can be those little strainers on your faucets. A very minute amount of it will cause the smell.
Okay, well, we don't have a hot water heater. Ours comes right through the furnace, and I can check those.
Yeah.
Do
But,
you have a filtration system in your house?
No, I get my water. A lot of the drinking water comes through the refrigerator. System.
I would check all those filters.
Yeah.
Because once it gets inside the system, it sometimes can just linger. And like I said, the articles that we pulled in research, because we were researching it, we wanted to know what could
Yeah.
possibly cause it. Just the slightest amount of it can cause that odor.
Right. The one through the filter seems fine. It's only through the tap.
Yeah.
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 I don't know because I'm not a water expert, but maybe I was thinking maybe the water tank, because everything gets pumped into the water tank from Chester, and maybe the water tank has a little bit of.
It's funny you'd say that. We just had an engineer up there who completely did an evaluation of our water tank.
Right.
And we know we don't have problems at the water tank. So, because that Chester pumps in at night and we pump out during the day.
Right.
So it's not sitting there. And
Right.
then there's a mixer in there that keeps it moving all the time so it doesn't sit there and build up stagnation.
Yeah.
We continue to research it. I don't know any other way to say it.
Right.
We spend a lot of time because we're concerned too.
Yeah.
And
And again, it's not just me,
Yeah.
but if it's the infrastructure, to me, and I'm not saying it's not, and it could be the temperature and all that, but it just seemed like it was a certain,
Well,
time frame, and it hasn't
Yeah,
gotten
we
any
had a
better.
perfect storm there.
Yeah.
And again,
Well, I just want to,
Yeah.
let you know, see, I know you're trying to work on it, and
What was
just
the
let you know
address we
we're,
just tested? We
we're still
tested
having
it
some
and
issues.
put it address
Yeah.
this week.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what,
Commission, the only thing I wanted to add, because I think it's important people realize, when Judy talks about testing, we use a third-party independent laboratory to do
Yeah.
the test
Um,
results.
I
so it's-
trust
No, I'm
that.
just saying, that's, we want to get to the bottom of it.
Right.
And the other thing that you may not be aware of is, in addition to what Chester Water does to provide us healthy drinking water, and I don't know if you look at our consumer confidence report that's out on our website, but we test independently of Chester Water.
Yeah.
And we have an independent tester in here every month. He goes out and he randomly tests at different spots in town, and then he
Right.
provides us with feedback. And all of our water is definitely safe to drink and consume.
Oh, yeah, I'm not, I believe that too. I'm just,
Summertime is when you're going to experience that taste and odor more frequently than you do in wintertime because of the heat.
right. Okay. And maybe
Well,
one day we'll get new infrastructure.
yes,
One
one
day.
day.
Thank you.
Chip, have those other people that you're referencing, give us a call so we can see if
Yeah.
because we try to see if there's a pattern in a spot and collect data. We don't
Okay.
just get a call and ignore it. We will collect data
Right.
and do our best to find out if there is an issue.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Skip.
Okay, staff reports, town administrator,
I don't have anything.
police chief.
I have 4 items. First, I've given you the police department blotter. Sorry about that. I've given you the police department blotter. There's 170 calls for service. There were no unusual calls and no new trends. Second, I provided you all with a survey that was taken by Red Speed in the area of the middle school. As you can see on that survey, that's what they found, and the locations that are on the illustration are the places that they would approve for speed cameras. So when you get a moment, just take a look at those, and we can discuss those as the process moves on. Third, school started about a week ago, and we've had some very foggy mornings. So when you're out and about and you're traveling around town, please be cognizant that there are kids walking to and from school. So pay attention to your crosswalks and travel safely so our future can get home from, or get to school and get home from school without any incidents. And lastly, about a week ago, the 2 officers here in town were working, and they overheard a medical call and a sheriff's department call just outside of town for a 2-year-old that was missing. They agreed to respond to the area, and at that time, while responding, the officers learned that the parent or someone on scene had found the 2-year-old floating in a pool, in a pond rather. The child was unresponsive and not breathing when the officers got there. Because of their training, they jumped right in, was able to reestablish a pulse, and the last we know, the 2-year-old was taken to a medical facility alive. But if it wasn't for the officers' training and knowledge, and it may have ended right there. So I'd like to, acknowledge that they've done something to help.
Yeah.
And the world, when everybody thinks police are bad, this is what we're out doing. And you'll hear more about that coming. I want to get more details from the family or from EMS to make sure that that toddler survived. And that's all I have for now, unless there's some questions.
Thank you, chief. Assistant town administrator.
I've always got a couple of things. So I will remind everyone that you need to register to vote if you are living in the town of Rising Sun. You need to register no later than, I think, September 15th. So be sure and do that. We also have our election coming up to become eligible to be a candidate in the election. We need to have your information by the 15th, by 6 o'clock p.m. Town hall will be open until 6 o'clock that day to meet that requirement. And then we're going to start a project this week, actually. We have information out in the community right now about, we're going to be resealing the municipal parking lot. We don't want it to get any further, the cracks to get any deeper. And so we're going to take it half at a time. It'll be in and out in the same exit. So we're putting reminders on the cars that park there, and we're taking flyers to all the businesses so that they can post them and people can start preparing for that little bit of work. And then on the 19th, we're going to start on the 14th and do half of it. Then on the 19th, we'll do the other half. And Chief's going to be marking how the traffic flow will be. And so just be a couple of days of a little bit of an inconvenience. People can park. There's lots of places you can park. You can park over in the bank parking lot. Over here, I did check. There's plenty of room. There's plenty of places to find a park during that period of time. The other thing, I think that tells you that and that, is just a reminder that we do start our financial audit on Monday, the 18th. So we'll be working with the auditors for that week. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Well, the mayor's not here, so there's no mayor's report. Commissioners' comments. Commissioner Braun?
The Planning Commission will meet next Monday to discuss 2 cases involving special exceptions and variances. One case involves a proposed daycare facility at 8 Cooper Avenue, accommodating about 30 children aged from infants to 5 years. The second case will involve a special exception request to construct a Maris Tire Center next to the car wash on East Main Street, across from McDonald's. The site is located adjacent to a floodplain area and will require careful plan review in order to confirm compliance with the floodplain regulations.
What was, again, what type of tire?
Mavis. Mavis.
Mavis?
Mavis.
Thank you. Commissioner Collider.
I have no report this time.
Okay, I really don't have a report about anything in Rising Sun, but I have got a couple things that were brought out in the WIG that reflects the same problem we're having. Trash collection and waste management's decision not to bid on Elkton. Now, Elkton, like Rising Sun, had waste management for a very long time. But that waste management, one of the things that's constantly been thrown up, well, waste management, they took everything. Well, guess what? This is part of the problem. Elkton did sign with Republic for basically, I believe, Calvin, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, about the same what we're paying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that, this is not just Rising Sun's problem. Okay? Another article was on the problems Perryville is having with the very same thing, Skip, you talked about. Water, the quality of it, and that's why I said what I said. A lot of things are pointing to the older infrastructure. The water is not moving as fast. I can't say for sure, but I can say comfortably, I bet there's only a 4-inch main going down West Cherry Street.
We've had a few holes in the road, we could look next time.
And that's was great when people didn't use water a lot. Now, it's a problem. Same way with Cooper and Buckley and Reynolds. We've had problems over there. That's where it seems to be. And last but not least, what I want to bring up. Calvin has been telling us especially about stormwater management and its cost. Well, Charlestown right now is wrestling with the same problem we are. You have to do it but the state has not funded it. And it's creating a financial burden on the communities. So these aren't things that are surprises to us, but it also says that we're not the only ones that are dealing with this. That's kind of the end of my report tonight. Board of Zoning Appeals and Planning Commission schedule. Town Administrator, do you want to?
Yes, what you, just letting everybody know, we, as Commissioner Braun had stated, we have a planning commission meeting this Monday, the 18th at 6:30 to hear the two planning commission and PCBA cases, 2023-01 and 2023-02. That's the daycare and the Mavis Tire. And then that will be followed up with those same cases appearing before the Board of Appeals on Thursday evening, the 21st at 6:30. So that's what that is.
Thank you. Upcoming town events. Let us not forget Spooktacular on Saturday, October the 14th. I believe it runs 11 to 4, correct?
11 to 4, and we are really needing volunteers. If you have any input at all, if anyone has any input at all about potential volunteers, people who could help us with line management, with conducting the events, we really need some help. So just have them reach out to us. Just call Town Hall and we'll be working with people.
Thank you. Upcoming holidays where the town hall will be closed. Columbus Day, Monday, October the 9th, and Veterans Day, Friday, November the 10th. Trash, recycling, and yard waste schedule. Yard waste will be collected every Monday pending any weather-related issues. Yard waste collection will be moved to the following Tuesday if a town holiday falls on Monday. Trash will be picked up on Thursdays pending weather-related issues. The hauler recognizes the following below holidays: New Year's, Memorial Day, Independence, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Please check the trash collection schedule and town website for any changes in collection. The recycling will be picked up on Tuesday, and the same thing applies. If it's a holiday, check your schedule. If there's nothing else to be brought before the board tonight,
It just came up, for the upcoming events, I heard the Civil War thing's back on.
yes, the Civil War event is scheduled. I don't have the date, but I know it's been rescheduled
I think it's the 6th or 7th.
of October, yeah.
They're going to start setting up on the 5th, but it will be 6th, 7th, and 8th, so it's the
Okay.
first.
And also.
Weekend in
the
October.
trash- Wasn't there, in the water bill, we get, the schedule for the trash. The newest one I have that I could find, it had the old schedule.
Okay,
But I might have lost, I might have lost.
You lost it then, because I had 2 copies of the Republic one.
Me
I
too.
do.
yeah,
Oh, she got mine.
It should be on our website too.
and it's also,
The current one should be on our website.
all right, if nothing else comes before the board, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.